Juicer and Dreech, wow. Future and Juicewrld album review. First of all, let me preface this by saying this album was nowhere near as bad as people were telling me it was. It wasn't that amazing, but it wasn't that bad either. Like, relax, okay? Just because it wasn't top notch. I mean, what did you expect? I don't want to be one of those people that likes to discount any kind of criticism for an album because people, I feel personally, people's expectations for it were just too high. The mumble rap god has teamed up with new emo rap recruit Juicewrld. I've always wondered whether or not it was fair to consider Juicewrld an emo artist simply because he makes, you know, music that happens to be a little bit more emotional. I think it requires a little bit more than that. I mean, he only has one project out, Goodbye and Good Riddance. I don't really think he has enough material out that's sad enough or dark enough for me to consider it emo. So that was kind of one of the things that I was, you know, taking into consideration before listening to this project, was seeing how they would mix their two different worlds together. And while both artists have talked about substance abuse and both artists have talked about drugs in their music, they both talk about it in different ways. Without necessarily putting much glorification on it, I can say more for Juicewrld's part than Future. They both talk about their place when it comes to drug use, drug distribution, that drug distribution being a part of Future's theme. Going into it, I'm expecting drug talk, whether it's about Juicewrld using or Future distributing. The album starts out pretty strong, pretty melodic. I think both their features are pretty good, even though it is kind of, you know, odd to have a feature included in an album that starts off with, I guess, an anticipated collaborative effort. I don't really see the point of having a feature on the first song, and not only does it not add that much, it takes away from the anticipation of having Juicewrld and Future be together on a whole album. By the second track, Astronauts, I'm pretty much accepting the idea that Future and Juicewrld aren't really taking these two totally different approaches to the music at this point. They're just giving their similar take with different vocal tones, which for me is a really big issue when it comes to projects that I'm listening to that offer these bonuses with certain artists. Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of Kid Cudi and Kanye's Kids See Ghosts, but it was a world that was created for the both of them that I don't think either of them would have explored separately. This is a project, for the most part, that by track number 2, they're carrying so well at this point only because I think that they could carry it by themselves anyway. Even more so for Juicewrld, in my opinion, because I feel like most of the album he's giving his take on Future's Drugland, a more generic kind of style for him, who's created an aesthetic and a platform for himself based off of this kind of youthful delivery that's full of life. Oddly enough, his subject matter is generally just more sad, but I think that, you know, the way he delivers it, the content, the style, and especially the melody within his voice, it's pretty young and it adds a lot of life to everything that he becomes a part of. For that appeal to be made so generalized and generic to the point where it can fit on an album that has beats that you'd find on any other trap record was a little disappointing for me personally, because I thought, you know, a big portion of this album was going to be Juicewrld and Future, their worlds colliding, not necessarily Juicewrld becoming a part of Future's already existent landscape. Still, by the time we get to the second track and I'm listening all the way through, it's so good to the point where I'm accepting that Juicewrld could make a trap album. Those moments where it feels like Future is kind of becoming a part of Juicewrld's world happen way fewer times than I'd like for them to. Like, the closing track I thought was great, and Juicewrld seemed to carry a good portion of that track for me. Future just seemed to nearly fit into his world. And while I'm not expecting lyrics from an album like this, some lyrics are just so bad that they just make me like, you could have said literally anything else. You would have been fucking fine saying literally anything else than what you just said. Yo ho dirty, she got cooties. It'd be okay if he was like 15, but dude's almost 20. Come on, y'all. Or on Fine China when he says the last man was a pussy, had a vagina. Like, I didn't know what a vagina was when you just told me he was a pussy. Like, I don't understand. Again, while I'm not expecting lyrics from this album, it doesn't have to be laughably bad at some points. The track Different with Young Bands is actually pretty interesting to me, not only because of how it sounds, but because their rapping styles just seem so twisted. The track itself seems like a backwards instrumental that keeps looping itself. It's really warped. It's really dark. There's these moments in between where there's just these drops, and it sounds like you're in this just complete darkness.
Still got Molly in my system. I still got Xannies on my mental. It's been a couple years since I quit them. I don't want to realize, but I may realize that.
I like this track not only because it keeps to the theme of the album, but there's just such a strong, obvious sense of darkness to it, almost as if it were recorded at a gravesite or some shit. By the time we get to tracks like No Issue, we kind of understand that Juicewrld and Future have been talking about, you know, their lack of love for the drugs they've been taking and putting into their system, but they still continue to take them, referencing their addiction, referencing their issue with these substances, opening up a lane of transparency between them and the audience, the people who are going to be listening to this project. It seems like around the point of track number 12, World on Drugs, the title track, we get to the point where there's like another 4 tracks added for what seems to be no reason. I mean, the album really could have ended there, but kind of just goes on for longer, extending the album, a couple extra songs for features that don't really do much for the overall experience anyway. Future has a couple solo tracks, one particularly with Nicki Minaj that doesn't really help to add this druggy atmosphere to the album itself. Same thing happens with Gunna. It doesn't add much. The only track out of the final 4 was Hard Work Pays Off, which I thought was a really great atmospheric track that seemed to put Future in Juicewrld's lane and have the two collectively sing on that one track. This is one of the few moments on the album where I felt they were acting as artistic duos, not just artists who were taking advantage of their traction and decided to capitalize off of it by making more generic Percocet, lean, druggy music. I guess for a Juicewrld fan, this album might actually do something for you in the sense that you might not like hearing Future and you might love trap instrumentals, but you might want to hear them from a younger, more youthful perspective, which is something that Juicewrld does a lot on this album. Take it from the perspective of you not wanting to hear about the drug lifestyle and you not wanting to hear about Future distributing the product all over the place. Maybe you want to hear Juicewrld's perspective about when he was in math class, like he starts out with on track number 5. Or maybe you want to hear him talk about Rick and Morty. Or maybe you want to hear him talk about somebody's cooties. I don't know. But I do think it's a more interesting take to have a rapper that's not, you know, about the trap lifestyle rapping over an instrumental that you will find in trap music. I guess the youth in that kind of helps you to not take it so seriously, and it would work if Juicewrld wasn't at the same time also talking about on some other tracks how, you know, he's in the club or he's fucking bitches or he's getting money, you know, more generic stuff that I really don't think makes him appealing anyway or added to his appeal with his Goodbye and Get Riddance tape. The features don't really add much to this project overall, and the whole aesthetic of the album isn't really that consistent. I mean, for this to be a World on Drugs, it's not really a druggy atmosphere consistently or a take that I would have to, you know, really feel like I'm entering a different space or a different world on. Sure, it's called World on Drugs, but I'm pretty sure that's just another way to say Juicewrld is on Future's trap beats. And I really think the only thing separating Future and Juicewrld on this project is the difference in content that they might rap about from time to time in their vocal tones. Other than that, they explore a lot of similar flows. Other than that, the album doesn't do much for me. I mean, I would have loved if Juicewrld and Future created a world or an atmosphere and didn't kind of take a generic route, knowing that their audience already likes a specific sound. I think these two have enough differences to where they could come together and make a new world where they can both have music exist that shouldn't exist in their own lane already. I think they both bring enough to the table where they're both capable of that. It just doesn't happen on this project, in my opinion. Tracks that are good are great, but there are far too few of those moments for this album to be 16 tracks. Juicewrld and Future, World on Drugs. Thank you for watching. Let me know how you felt about this album, about this collab. Yeah, tell me how you felt about it, because, you know, I'm a little indifferent, a little less than that, but it's okay. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. I'm out. Do lean, because that's the cool thing to do.